Hello everyone and welcome to the first book review on this channel. The book I'm going to talk about today is the book by Robert Sapolsky called Behave, The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst. This is the book I'm going to talk about today. It is a huge book with over 650 pages and it is a 2017 publication. Now before I make any comment about the book, let me make it very clear that I have never done a book review in my life until today. Also, I have no idea how it is done or there exists some kind of standard procedure to do it. I'll just try to share my opinion about the book for all the book lovers around the world so that they can have a first-hand idea about this book. I picked this book in January 2025. I came to know about this book from a Google search when I was randomly looking for the best book on human psychology when the name of this book popped up amongst others. No sooner did I see the title of this book, I ordered immediately. Then the journey of 5 months began. You might wonder why did it take so much time to complete just one book, because 5 months is a long time. Obviously, I did not read on the daily basis. There were times I could not touch the book for more than 2 weeks. The last time a book took so much time to complete was in 2013 when I read a crime fiction by J.K. Rowling called The Cuckoo's Calling under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith. Hope you remember Cormoran Strike, The Private Detectives. How many of you have read that book? The reason a book takes so much time to complete could be either because you are reading it minutely as if you are trying to memorize every bit of information in it, which is obviously not possible, or you are having a hard time understanding it. Well, in case of this book, it was due to the latter. I almost shelved it after the first chapter because it was a bit too technical, so it was kind of difficult for me to understand the processing of neurochemical information without having the basic knowledge of the human brain and its different reasons. The reason I'm saying this is because there is an ample use of terms such as cortex, frontal cortex, amygdala, prefrontal cortex, ventromedial prefrontal cortex, neocortex, hippocampus, hypothalamus, temporal lobe, occipital lobe, etc. Especially in the beginning of the book. These weird sounding names are in fact the names of different regions of the human brain which actively take part in decision making. I had no idea how they look like, where they are in the brain, and what function they do individually before picking this book. But every decision we make is an outcome of some chemical processes in these regions influenced by various other epigenetic factors, which means the change that occurs in the gene due to gene-environment interactions. Despite my initial struggle, I kept reading and then gradually I started to feel comfortable with it in the later part and I ended up loving this book. I felt comfortable with various regions of the brain which I was absolutely unfamiliar with initially. I learned that amygdala sits under cortex in the temporal lobe, is responsible for aggression and fear. Frontal cortex is where logical and analytical decisions are made. The left hemisphere is responsible for analytical decision, whereas right one is more involved in intuition and creativity. Though 85% of human brain are developed at the age of 2, cortex does not fully develop until age 25. This is one of the reasons why adolescents are more risk-taking and are more prone to violent behavior. Their brain are more likely to be shaped by the experience they encounter during this phase of life and the environment in which they live in. Human brain has remarkable neuroplasticity during childhood, which means it can absorb information much faster than adults, and also it can change itself with the change in environment or experiences. This is the reason why exposure to negative experience negatively affect child in the later part of life. In this book, the authors try to understand and explain myriad of neurological processes inside human brain when a behavior occurs in response to certain stimuli. What goes in that person's brain a second before the behavior occurred? What sensory cues triggered the nervous system to produce that behavior? What hormone acted hours to day earlier to change how responsive that individual was to the sensory stimuli that triggered the nervous system to produce that behavior? What features of the environment in the prior weeks to years changed the structure and function of that person's brain, thus changed how he responded to those hormone and environmental stimuli? Then you go back to the childhood of the individual, their fetal environment, and their genetic makeup. Then you go further back to the culture in which he grew up and impact of culture in shaping the behavior of people living in that group. Then you try to understand the ecological factor that helped shape that culture until the evolution of that behavior. When you try to explain a behavior, it goes something like this. A behavior has occurred due to release of neurochemical X in the brain. You are also saying the release of hormone Y in the morning increased the neurochemical X. You are also saying the environment in which that person was raised made his brain more likely to release neurochemical X. You are also saying because of the presence of certain types of gene that cause to produce neurochemical X. You are also saying because of the various factors that shape the evolution of that particular genes. Thus, it is impossible to conclude that a behavior is caused by a gene, a hormone, an environment, or a culture, and it is definitely not an involuntary knee-jerk reaction that came out of nowhere on its own as a response to that particular stimulus. It is in fact complicated. This book also contains a lot of factual information in it. I didn't know about Rwandan genocide of 1994. I didn't know about Rwanda, a country in Central Africa consists of two ethnically distinct groups called Tutsi and Hutu tribes, and how the concept of us and them can be disastrous sometimes. I didn't know about Arab Spring and how an act of single man could trigger the uprising in the entire Middle East. I didn't know about My Lai massacres or Vietnam War, where American soldiers killed over 300 unarmed civilians, and how heroically one American soldier called Hugh Thompson stopped further massacre. I never gave a thought whether or not we like violence. Then I realized we in fact love violence, we just hate the wrong kinds. So overall, I read this a very good read, but yeah, a very technical one, I would say. And I recommend each one of you to grab a copy and start reading it. If you are not a student of psychology and bioscience, you may struggle a bit initially, but if you somehow manage to complete it, you will feel great. Your wealth and charm of life will change. You will learn how not to judge people, because if you try to judge a behavior, you have to first understand the causality of it, and to do that, you have to take into account what happened a second before to million years before that behavior occurred, and everything in between. So next time, be careful before you judge someone. There are a lot of things to talk about this book, but I leave that to you to find out for yourself. For some of you who are curious like myself, I have shared the 15 minutes TED Talks on the book by Robert Sapolsky himself in the first link in the description. And for more details, you can watch content in the second link in the description. That too also by Robert Sapolsky himself. Now, before I conclude this video, I'm going to reveal my next book. It is the biography of Howard Hughes by Bartlett and Steele, called Howard Hughes, His Life and Madness. Now, in the next 20 days or so, you may witness some characteristics of Howard Hughes in me. This is how I am. I love reading a book. So take care. Enjoy the Sunday.